This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever find yourself playing the budgeting game? Well, with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive, you can find options that fit your budget and potentially lower your bills. Try it at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. Not available in all states.
If your fashion wish list lives rent-free in your brain, you need to be on Poshmark. With Poshmark, you're shopping millions of listings from thousands of closets, each curated by someone with their own style. Vintage finds, designer pieces, and everyday staples all in one place. Search for your favorites or let the discovery come to you. Poshmark makes it easy to find what you actually want to wear at prices that feel like a quiet win. Download the Poshmark app today and use code PODCAST10 when you sign up to get $10 off your first purchase.
Did they get you to trade your heroes for ghosts? Hot ashes for trees, hot air for a cool breeze, cold comfort for change? And did you exchange a walk-on part in the war for a lead role in a cage?
A Swift Kick in the Ass, episode 85.
All big changes start with a swift kick in the ass. Join the journey of lifelong friends, John Curren and Tom Stewart, as they make conventional thought bend over and take a boot to the keister. Warning, listeners may notice a force equal to or greater than needed to get your ass moving. A swift kick in the ass, living life on your terms.
Welcome, I'm Tom Stewart, and I'm joined with my lifelong childhood friend, John Curren. And today's topic, John, is kind of fun. How to think like a virgin and why you should.
How to think like a virgin?
Yeah, man.
Yeah, well, I think maybe a lot of us think like a virgin, don't we? And what we mean by that is maybe we're a little bit nervous about these experiences that might be coming our way, might be happening, might not. That's kind of a strange play on words, but when we enter new situations, we can be somewhat virgin-like, right?
Yeah, I think it's good to be virgin-like, because what happens is it allows you to be humble and go into a situation with open eyes, and you're able to take more in than if you go into a situation thinking you know it all. Then your cup is already full and no one can give you any more information. Let me explain that real quick. There was an old proverb that used to be a martial arts proverb where there's a guy with a teacup, and the student comes and he asks the master, if he can have some tea. And the master says, "I can't give you any tea." And he's like, "Why not?" "Because your cup is already full." Because what happened is the student thought he knew everything. So therefore, the master could not pour any more tea into his cup, because that was representing the knowledge. So if you go with an empty cup, you're able to attain the knowledge that will help you get to where you want to be.
Yeah, I guess I get what you're saying. I think of virginity as being open to, making yourself vulnerable, opening yourself up to possibilities and allowing nature to take its course, so to speak. You have to be open to those situations. In your life. This show isn't about sex. It's about living life on your own terms and increasing your power and your leverage and living your life in a way that allows you to live a fuller life. And if we close ourselves off from certain experiences and we just kind of put our hands out and say, no, no is no. Are you really giving yourself an opportunity to learn and to kind of soak in that experience and learn from it? And, when you become sexually active as an adult, it really does, change you as a person. Our views on sexuality go down right to our core, don't they? And who we are. So
and how we interact with others, and how we must learn respect for others.
Yeah, how we interact with others, how we view others, how we view ourselves. It all kind of plays into that. And I think also, um, when a person is ready to, take that leap and enter the realm of the unknown, there is a certain amount of fear there. You can hear people talking about their experiences, and I mean, think back, middle school, when you really start to, when kids are talking about sex and, and everything, and nothing about it. There are a lot of question marks, and there can be a lot of fear associated with that. And that first time is ever, it's really ever so important to do it for the right reasons and to not put yourself in jeopardy or danger, with that. I think that it's fear is what keeps us alive. Fear is a basic instinct that we have that can either hold us back, or it can open us up to many different things, and some of those things could possibly be dangerous. So I think you have to kind of walk a delicate path. You have a careful path in addressing that.
John, so when we first came up with the idea for this show, we weren't really talking about, being like a virgin, but that's part of the attitude of what we're dealing with. I was talking to John about the comfort zone, and now we've had an episode about getting out of your comfort zone in order to attain change, maybe 6 episodes ago. But it really is such an important thought to embrace, and it's something that I personally am going through right now, and something that I want to instill change in my life for something that's been bugging me for quite a while. So, I've talked about Brazilian Jiu Jitsu on this show before, and for 8.5 years, me and my wife and my family have been training together, under one school. Now, our professor had left 2 years ago to California, and we stayed on with our team. And that was a choice that we made, but most of our team had kind of broke away. And in that time, I've become very, I kind of fell into a rut where the training didn't give me the same life that it used to give me. I was missing classes. I wasn't showing up. I wasn't training like I should. And it bugs me because it's something that, I hold dear in my, with my family, and something I train with my wife, and, something that has helped us connect and build a better relationship. So we'd been talking about it for quite a while, and we decided to change schools. Now, you might think that's not a big deal, but it really is. When you've been involved with a community of the same people for a long time, there's a lot of feelings there, but sometimes you have to use your head and say, what is it really that I need to do in order to pull myself out of this rut and pull myself out of this situation to go beyond and attain something higher? And that is getting out of your comfort zone. But my wife, my son, and I, and my daughter hasn't tried a new school yet, but the other night we started our first class there. And walking into a new school, a big school, with a very high-level black belt, a 7th degree black belt that was trained under the Gracies, it was very intimidating. Even though we've had 8 years of experience, you go in there, you feel like you're sheep going into a wolf's den, which should not be the case, and it really wasn't. But our interpretation driving there, we were all nervous, because you have people that, okay, does my belt rank mean the same in saying in their school as, am I going to get my ass kicked by lower belts? And so I needed to approach it like a virgin. I needed to go in like a child and just be like, you know what? The day is going to be the worst that it can possibly be, because I'm only going to get better from here. So it doesn't matter. I need to leave my ego at the door. I need to come in and take a new perspective with an empty cup, not with that full cup, bringing my other stuff from my other school and my thoughts and my ideas about jiu-jitsu. I had to go with an empty cup to learn as much as I can. And like I said, John, it was hard to walk through that door. And it was a hard decision to leave teammates and friends and, who have been like family to us to try to improve ourselves.
Yeah. And there's a very well-known book called Feel the Fear, but Do It Anyway. It was written by Dr. Susan Jeffers, or the late Dr. Susan Jeffers. It's a short book, but it's a great read, and it talks about exactly what the subject that we have on the episode tonight is. Fear is a very natural feeling, and it goes all the way back to the caveman days. Fear is a tool that we can use to our advantage if we so choose. It's natural to fear new situations. Fear of the unknown is sometimes worse. It's sometimes it's worse than actually knowing. Fear of the known, or when you address fear and you stand up to fear, just like Tom explained he and his family just did by changing schools. Yes, they entered this different world, a different training environment, different people, different skill levels, different grading systems in the belts. They really don't exactly know what to expect. And when people don't know what to expect, a lot of times people will hold back and not make that change because they're comfortable, because they're not, they fear the unknown. But when you take that step forward and you if you can imagine yourself kind of in a circle, and within that circle is your comfort zone. You can operate anywhere within that circle and feel comfortable. But when you start pushing up against that wall, just like Tom did by going to a new school, you're not just pushing through in one little area and making this weird shaped thing that probably looks like a squash. It actually expands the size of the circle. So it's not, you might be pushing out, and addressing your fears in regards to your jiu-jitsu training, but it opens you up to addressing fears in other aspects of your life. It makes it easier to do that. But you have to take that first step. And every time that you do that, you're actually expanding the world of possibilities, because now you have that experience to say, hey, you know what? I was so nervous and so fearful about making this change, and it was like the best thing ever to happen to me, because I've learned so much. I've met these different people. I mean, the benefits of it can go on, forever. But it's living your life in that way, to whereas when opportunities for new experiences come your way, you have a decision to make. And when you open yourself up to those new experiences, now again, not doing anything with just haphazardly, not thinking about it, and not just putting that on autopilot like a lot of people do with their own lives. I guess what I'm saying in short is, don't do stupid things just for the sake of having the experience. But if it's thoughtful and it's considerate and there's purpose behind your actions, you will be expanding your world. And the more you do it, the easier it will become you will become less fearful. I remember back when I don't even know how old I was. I was a kid. I was playing Little League baseball. And I was not very athletic as a kid, at least as far as team sports was concerned. My dad didn't really spend a lot of time with me playing, throwing the baseball around. And
that makes two of us.
What was that?
That makes two of us.
Yeah. So, I didn't know anything really about baseball. And if I'm to be honest, which I am, I learned baseball from a book. It was like the encyclopedia of baseball. It was a book my mom got for me. It's still fun. I can still remember that book after all these years. That's how I learned how to play baseball, from a book. Well, we all know that reading something in a book and applying it in real life, there's the big difference. Real life experience it is much more valuable than the book learning, I think. But they do go hand in hand, and they are both important aspects that we have to consider. But I went to try out for the baseball team, and the coach asked me my name, and I was so nervous. I couldn't even speak. I couldn't even say my name. My stomach was tied up in knots. I mean, I know my hands were sweating. I was probably like in a movie scene where like buckets of water are coming down my forehead. I was just this nervous little tongue-tied kid. And I don't even know how I got my name out. I think I pointed at the list. I couldn't even speak. And now look at me. You can't shut me up. Now I'm long-winded as hell.
That's right. I've let you go on your rant. It's funny you talk about the book. It makes me think, since we were talking about martial arts, of the Karate Kid, the original. And Mr. Miyagi, he was a maintenance guy, and he was inside Daniel's apartment, and Daniel's practicing karate by looking in a book. And, he's like, look, Mr. Miyagi's looking at Daniel do these kicks, and he's like, you learn karate out of a book? And he's just thinking to himself, like, that's not going to work, Right. And obviously it didn't, because Daniel was always getting his butt kicked by the bullies. But it's the same case.
You have to learn by waxing cars.
You're right.
Wax on, wax off.
And I remember as a kid doing that. I remember going to the library and checking out these self-defense books, thinking I could learn how to protect myself. But it doesn't work that way. And that's something about jiu-jitsu, that what makes jiu-jitsu very pure and very honest. When I go to a school, or when every jiu-jitsu class, it's different than most martial arts, because what happens is, you do your warm-up, you learn a few moves and techniques, and you drill them. At the end of class, you do something called rolling. And it's wrestling, really. It's wrestling. And so there's no punching and kicking in jiu-jitsu. It's all grappling. But it's grappling that's going to either break your arm or make you pass out, because there's chokes, there's footholds, there's arm bars, there's leg locks, there's all kinds of nasty things that really hurt. And to prevent yourself from getting hurt, when you get caught in that situation, you tap out. So it's very clear when you're wrestling, if someone is your superior, or you don't have your movement down because you're trying something, the techniques that you've learned against a resisting opponent. And it's very, very difficult. I mean, it takes years and years of drilling it and fighting and learning these little intricate moves that you can't move, but you learn anywhere but in, like trying to learn how to swim. If you weren't in the water, you got to be in the water. And that's what happens when you're fighting. And so it's a very honest approach, and it reveals to yourself, and it's very humbling if you're a higher belt and you're getting your ass kicked by a lower belt. And, you're learning, because it's making you better, but it's also very humbling. And that's what is the power of jiu-jitsu. And it kind of wakes you up and says, wow, man. It's like, and it doesn't matter. It could be a little skinny guy that you look at him, don't think anything about him, but he'll beat the crap out of you. Or it could be a big fat guy. Everyone has their strengths, and you never can tell just by looking at someone.
Right. And there's a couple things. First of all, knowledge is good, or it can be good.
Yes.
But if you cannot apply that knowledge, it's pretty much useless. And like you said, using your jiu-jitsu example, if you don't have the experience, when you're in a fight and you're fighting an opponent, you have to quickly adapt to the situation. So if you're I'm not into jiu-jitsu, but I've know enough about sports to say, if you're in a competition you have to compete. You have to answer to whatever that person is throwing at you. So, which means that you have to know what you're doing. You have to know what the different options are involved. You know, what can you do, what you can't do as well. And some of those things only experience will teach you. Now, in something I knew more about, I think back about when we were kids, and we ordered a book about how to pick up girls.
I remember that one.
Yeah, and I'm sure Tom will back me up on this. It doesn't work. It didn't work at all. I'm sure we got our faces slapped more than a few times just trying to follow that book. And I think it was 50 ways to pick up girls. And I'm sure we tried.
Well, it gave
50.
you a bunch of cheesy pickup lines. Like, if
Right.
you're in McDonald's, would you like to go on a McDate? That kind of, really, really bad.
And we tried them all and we failed miserably. But we eventually got married and settled down and had families. We fell in love with our wives, and we're still learning.
And we still throw out
We're
those
still
corny
learning
lines.
how to
We still throw those
communicate with
corny
women.
lines out every once in a while. Because, believe it or not, when you're married or, in a relationship, you still have to woo the other individual.
Yeah, so it's applied knowledge, I think, that is important here. And the only way to feel more comfortable with applying knowledge is through experience.
It really is. I mean, when I was in the Air Force, I flew on an airplane, and we had this book that we'd carry with us, and it was called a flight checklist, right? And it had step-by-step procedures for everything that we would encounter, whether it's a fire or a, emergency with the airplane going down, or if it's just a procedure that we do in daily operation. And the reason that we had this is because under stress, just like in jiu-jitsu, when you're fighting, a lot of all these techniques, and they all go out the window because you're fighting fear, you're fighting anxiety, stress, you got someone's weight that's crushing down on you. And, it's so many thoughts are going through your mind that it has to become almost automatic. But the military knows that in emergency situations like that, you're going to forget maybe of something that is real simple, a simple step that could save your life or,
Right.
make the emergency message go out properly. So they have a checklist, and you're supposed to follow this checklist no matter how well you know what you're doing. And it's a beacon. It's a guide that helps you, achieve what it is that you're going to achieve. Unfortunately, in jiu-jitsu, it's all in your head. So you have to think almost like you're playing chess, against someone. You got to think a few moves ahead. And it's not always easy because you think that they're going to do one thing and then they do something else. And you got to be able to pull out of that arsenal of tricks that you have something to counteract it.
Yeah, that's you have to adapt to
Right.
each situations, and situations change very quickly. Now, practice, practice, practice. And you can go through and practice and practice and practice. And still, when you get into that experience, that, and the actual reality of it is that you may not follow those checklists, but it's the training involved and the rehearsals and all those girls that we asked out on dates and they were failed dates. All of that experience mattered, and it adds up over time as you accumulate more knowledge, and eventually it should pay off. But you have to keep adapting. You have to keep trying. You have to keep putting yourself out there. Now, in regards to comfort, if you just look at it from a pure definition, comfort is the state of physical ease and freedom from pain or constraint. And how many people out there think that taking the easy way is the best way? Now, I'll counter that question with saying a lot of times I think we make life more difficult on ourselves than it really needs to be. So we can make ourselves uncomfortable and not really benefit from it if we're making things too difficult for ourselves without real purpose. But taking the easy way doesn't really teach you anything.
It doesn't. And when we were talking about it, John, a quote had popped up in my mind from Mike Tyson that he used to say, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face. And it's so true. I mean, when you're in that situation, everything goes out the window. And like you said, by repetition and drilling and constant practice, you get better at whatever craft it is that you do. And you learn how to think on your feet. And same thing as in whether you're speaking or negotiating or, dealing with someone at work. I mean, the art of the deal of, sales, I mean, it's all related to practice.
Yeah. And, when you practice it so much, it becomes second nature. So it actually becomes a part of you. And you might even think of it as being a part of you, but you didn't start out that way. But you evolve over time. We talk about habits on our show a lot, and really all a habit is an action that we take without thinking about it. There's no conscious thought behind the action. And on this show, we talk a lot about having conscious thought and applying that to our actions. And we also talk about how a lot of people just seem to be on autopilot. They're comfortable. They're on this path. They maybe don't mind it so much, or they don't mind it enough to venture off the path. They just continue. It's comfortable. They know it. They know what to expect. They know what to do. And that's the way they live their life. And man, I'm not knocking that at all if that's your thing. But that has never once been my thing, because I think that when we confront fear, when we stand up and we try new things, when we when we take that chance, make ourselves vulnerable and open to new possibilities, it can really just rock your world.
Absolutely. It's the way you get the most out of your life. It's where we grow. In that time that you're feeling that anxiety and that fear is the opportunity to grow. That's where change occurs. And you have to put yourself in that situation. If you're always playing it safe, if you're just getting by, if you're insecure, you're just surviving, you're never going to explore new things. You're never going to develop the confidence or the happiness and fulfillment that you really probably, I would imagine, want out of life. And I think a good percentage of the population survives. They stay within their comfort zone, and we're all guilty of this. And it's really hard to push yourself out of that comfort zone, but sometimes you have to take that step, and it could be something little. It could be something that you just want to change in your life. Try something different and, put yourself out there.
Yeah. And, sometimes you're going to get that right. Sometimes you're going to get it wrong, and you're going to mess up and make mistakes. And there's something to be learned from that too. I think it was Edison, who, it depends on what story you read, but, if he really invented the light bulb, or if he paid someone to do it and took the credit. But, he had 1,000 different experiments before he invented the light bulb. And what he said, I learned 1,000 different ways, not how
that it didn't work.
Yeah, that didn't work. And he kept on trying. Now, before the show, Tom, we were talking, and we talked about your level of comfort and how that affects the risks that you're willing to take. And I think you had said that the more comfortable you are, the more risk you're willing to take. And I think that makes for an interesting discussion, because I think of it from a financial perspective. If you are in debt, if you don't have money in the bank, and you have these heavenly bills that you have to pay, you're not going to be very comfortable, and you're not going to be willing to take risks, say, at your job, whereas you're dependent on that income from work. So you're going to be risk averse because you don't want anything to screw up that income. But what you don't I guess I bring this up is not really from the financial standpoint, but because there can be aspects of our life that hold us back. I know that when I was, up to my eyeballs in debt, I was very risk adverse. I was very stressed out about the possibility of losing my job. And then after I started getting on a good path and actually started getting traction with our financial plan and started paying off tons of money, that's when life hit me in the face and my position was eliminated. And I'll tell you that even though that was scary, and I would like to avoid any possibility of that ever happening again, I recognize that I went through the experience and I came through the other side in better shape than I was entering it. I'm no longer scared of losing my position because I know that I have experience, I have marketable skills, I have confidence in myself that I could find another job. And I firmly believe that life neither ends nor begins with insert your employer here.
Why does it have to be insert when we're talking about virgins?
Well, because I like to play on words. But and you totally missed my rock your world comment.
So think about it, John. If someone wants to change up the routine and try something different, some things they could do approaching it like a virgin is try something you've never done before. Around Christmas time, I gave my wife lessons for salsa dancing. We'd never done it, and it was a great experience. It was awkward. We went in completely not stepping on each other's toes.
You've never seen Tom dance? Believe me, it was awkward.
And I've talked about this experience before too with singing karaoke. I'm a shy person and I'm introverted. I'm not a very outgoing individual. And we would have these parties at home, and I'd put together a sound system because that's what I do. I worked in radio and I have a bunch of equipment, so I knew people wanted to sing karaoke, and I set it up. But you wouldn't catch me singing anything on karaoke. And then one time I was sitting there, I was like, you know what? I just need to do it. These are all family and friends that are around me. What's the worst? I mean, I'm really going to embarrass myself. And I remember the first time I went up and to go do it, my brother-in-law sitting there, he's going, Tom's going to sing? And he couldn't believe it because he knew he was going to be next, which he still hasn't done. But, and once I did it, and then I was like, hey, this is fun. And I started doing it more. And it just, that one more step out of that comfort zone to bring you something that can bring you joy. Maybe do something that, maybe what about if you hated broccoli as a kid or, some kind of food that was as a kid and you have it, and I did this with salads. I'm not a big salad eater because I hated it as a kid, but maybe you need to go out and try something that you thought you hated and give it another chance and see how that works for you.
So a couple things in order to help our listeners. So if you're in a situation and you're questioning whether or not you should do something, I would recommend a SWOT analysis. It's the business background I have. So SWOT stands for strength, weakness, opportunity, and threat. And basically take a sheet of paper, divide it into into quarters, into 4 sections. And the first block would be strengths. The strengths are what you think you're going to gain from whatever you're questioning. What are the benefits? What are you going to gain? What are the strengths of of your argument. And then what are the weaknesses? What's the worst thing that could happen? I love to think about extremes, because we all think of things in extremes, whether it's the best case possible or the worst case possible. And the reality, often, it's on a grade, but it's going to fall somewhere in between there. The chances of something being totally great or worst case scenario or best case scenario, the chances of that happening are very slim, statistically speaking. Chances are it's going to be towards the middle and maybe lean towards, either good or bad. So think about that. And then opportunities. What's the opportunity that you're gaining through this action that you want to take? And what opportunities are you losing to take that? If I considered being a lawyer at one time. My grandfather was state's attorney, and I always kind of had it in my head that maybe I'd be a lawyer like him. And the more I seriously entertained the thought of law school, but as I thought about it, one of the opportunities that I would lose was core to it was a core value of mine. I decided not to go for that. And that was spending time with my family and my friends, extremely important to me. And I knew that if I started to practice, I could just say goodbye to the life I knew. I wasn't going to have the time anymore to spend with my time or friends. I would lose that opportunity that I currently had. I didn't want to give that up. And then the last thing are the threats. What's the worst thing? What can happen to you if you don't go through with this? What can happen to you if you do go through with it? If you start framing your situation and you put some structure behind it, often you find out that your answer, and you had the answer in your head the whole time. You just needed to sort it out and get it organized so you could better understand it. And by applying structure to it, it allows you to better understand things.
I think, John, it also allows you to face your fears and step by step. Yeah, and do it anyways. But I mean, it's allowing you to see what the worst possible outcome is and kind of judge how you might react to that. So it's little incremental steps that, help you solve your problem. I think it's a great idea.
Yeah. One thing too is when you take a step out of your comfort zone, it can be very stressful. But stress is a necessary part of life. And stress always gets this negative connotation about it, but it's necessary, because without stress, we would just be blobs. I mean, stress is what gives us structure. It gives us it gives us walls. It gives us something to hold on to.
We would be all those people. Did you ever see the cartoon WALL-E? About the little robot, and there was the cruise ships, and all the fat people sat around with big gulps, floating in hover chairs, and they're all, like not paying attention to each other, and they're just blobs, like you said.
Yeah, you become blobs if you are stress free. Now relaxate. Now there's actually 3 parts of stress. There's eustress, which is healthy stress. And that, some stress is good, like we're talking about right now, and expanding your comfort zone. Yes, it's stressful, but it's healthy. It helps you grow as a person. It gives you these experiences and makes you have a fuller life. But then there's also distress, and that is the negative side of stress. That is the scary part of stress, or the bad part of stress. And prolonged stress like that can be actually very dangerous. It affects we all know it affects your body, increased heart rate, increased blood pressure. You can lose sleep, you lose your appetite. A whole number of things can affect you when you're in distress. And then, so that's one end of the extreme. And then the opposite end of the extreme is actually called relaxation. And that's to where there is no stress. And that's also important too. Sometimes it's important to become a blob and just veg, just take that nap on the couch in the afternoon could really leave you refreshed and reinvigorate you, for the next week if you take a Sunday nap or something like that. But if you're napping on the couch every day, day in and day out, and you never move, and you're just sitting there in your beanbag chair eating Cheetos, you're going to become a blob.
All right, Homer Simpson. We've all been there. But you don't want to become an adrenaline junkie. I guess that'd be the opposite end of the spectrum, because there is a phenomenon, if I can speak right, called hedonistic adaptation. And what that is, John, is that you just don't get turned on anymore. It's like you've seen it. It's like, no big deal. It's like watching, 24 hours of porn, and then when you go to have sex, it's like, yeah. So I've seen it. I've been there.
I knew a guy who almost destroyed his marriage that way because he was so into porn that his real relationship wasn't doing it for him anymore. It wasn't exciting for him. The porn was more invigorating. I don't know. But
and if you have any doubt about this, you should listen to our episode "To Porn or Not to Porn." That's a good one.
Yeah, that is a good one. Anyhow, I think a lot of people try to stay away and try to stay in their comfort zone for the mere fact that when you push yourself out and you put yourself out there, you make yourself vulnerable. You actually have to think and be consciously aware of your situation so that you can adapt and then take action to adapt.
But go in like a virgin. Don't have the preconceived ideas or thoughts or what's going to happen to you.
That's up for discussion though, Tom, because, I'll tell you, when I lost my virginity all those years ago, I had some preconceived notions.
What was that, about 5 years ago? Oh, no, you have a 14-year-old kid, so I guess I got to let you go a little bit. When entering anything new, sexually or otherwise, the truth of the matter is that you don't know, but you may have heard it from the kids or the guys in the locker room are talking about it, or you learned it through the internet or a book. We have these preconceived notions of what the experience is going to be like. And, think about it in terms of a movie. So, and maybe this is why I feel the way I do about Star Wars, Tom. I just thought of this. So back when Star Wars came out, I'm sure Tom could tell you the exact release date. 1977. I don't know the
I was
month.
thinking of the actual day.
Yeah, I don't know.
I actually saw it. You saw the movie before me, and actually you didn't see it just once before me. You saw it like 20 times before I saw it.
Well, that's because you told me you didn't watch it till like last year.
No, I saw it back then. But the expectation was built up to be so high that when I actually went through it, it was like I didn't see what the big deal was about. I mean, that's kind of like how that was the impression. Tom's looking at me like,
poor man.
About?
But the thing is, just something like that. Think about the timing. In 1977, they had never seen a movie like that with the special effects and the
Now he's trying to
story.
convince me.
Now it's become more commonplace. So we've adapted, what did I say, the phenomenon, if I can ever say that word right, of hedonistic adaptation. I guess that's what happened to you. It's it's old hat now.
You had built me up, and I was I had these great expectations. And when I get there, I mean, and it was a good movie. I mean, I did enjoy it, but did it reach the level that I expected? No, I think that's where the disconnect was. I mean, I've never said it was a bad movie. I've seen it. I've seen it multiple times at this point in my life, but I just never got why everyone was so into it. And I think I had all these expectations built up. I mean, I'm sure you've experienced this too with other movies. Whereas one of your friends says, man, you got to go see this movie, or you have to watch this TV show, or, you have to do something. You're going to love it. It's awesome. It's fantastic. It's going to change your mind. I mean, it's good.
Well, I was hoping that would happen with 50 Shades of Grey with my wife, but she came home and was like, nah, I really didn't like it.
Yeah, and what I learned is that when you try to adapt to that situation, and you say to your wife, hey, you want to try some 50 Shades of J? It don't work.
She's like, who's Jay?
Slap down.
Who's Jay?
Slap down. After all these years of marriage, I'm still learning. But but I'm going to still keep on trying. I'll keep trying. And I think that's what we should walk away from this episode with, is never give up. Keep trying. Keep growing personally. Take yourself out of that comfort zone and experience life. And the more that you do that, the more you're going to learn about what you like and what you don't like, and base that on real experience, not just what you've heard from others or read in a book.
Well said. So with that, I think that it's time to wrap this puppy up, man. Make sure to check out swiftkickingtheass.com. Sign up for our free membership site. There you'll get John's simple spending plan. He got himself more than $90,000 out of debt. You'll correct me every time I say that. But go in. It's in the archive. It's free. Just put in your email. It may look like you're signing up something with your credit card. It's not. All you have to do is put in your email and your name, and boom, you're in. And expect some good things in the future.
Yes, and our Facebook page has just been blowing up. Twitter's been blowing up. And I just want to say thank you to everyone who has recently followed us on Facebook. We love our listeners. We love our audience.
And all you have to do on Facebook is just put a Swift Kick in the Ass at the end of Facebook. And also Twitter is Kick in the Ass, I believe, is our Twitter handle.
Yep.
So until next time, this is Tom.
Next time.
Peace.
And this is John. Peace.
See ya.